Welcome to Frank Rogers' 1-Minute Hypocrisy Report, where we observe demonstrable, irrefutable,
woeful and staggering contradictions every step of the way.
Thank you, Mr. Chavez, exactly correct. By those who believe they are called to be watchmen, much like Superman and Batman fighting for who will save the city. We begin with Servus Christi, who has had a scripture-slinging battle of the watchmen with Mr. J.D. Hall of pulpit and pen.
And one of those is named Josh Chav.
None of this has ever been personal for me. My issues were strictly doctrinal.
Who doesn't belong in discernment ministry because he can't discern well.
Most of the battle began on whether or not John Macarthur needed a watchman smackdown or not.
Having taken issue with certain things that John Macarthur and co.
We'll handle Servus Christi first.
Now, I don't like the things that he said about me.
Things got ugly when J.D. Hall revealed his Jacob Prasch impression.
The first one is Jacob Prasch.
I want the big banana.
And if you don't know who that is, bless your heart.
You better repent!
I don't know what else. I've done podcasts on Jacob Prasch before, where he talks about that John Macarthur.
You are a false teacher, John Macarthur.
That John Macarthur.
You're an apostate. You are not a servant of the living God anymore.
That wicked John Macarthur and that
RCY2K Sproul.
that R.C. Sproul.
Now I have more respect for a pimp on a street corner.
But he was talking about that R.C. Sproul and John Macarthur.
My offer to debate you stands, Mr. Macarthur.
He reminds me of Lewis Black, minus the swear words, Jacob Prasch. What a Looney Tune.
I don't want one of your flunkies. I want the big banana.
What's your name?
Jacob has not been able to take down that big banana quite yet, but maybe one day. Servus Christi was not impressed.
But one of the guys, I use that term liberally, is going to release a post, and it's a troll post.
Mr. Chavez, with his super watchman skills, was able to see the error of J.D. Hall's trolling sins.
He dabbles in trollery, seems to gloat in it. Maximum disruption and argument. That's what a troll is. That's what J.D. Hall dabbles in. He's not going to deny it.
Mr. Chavez pronounced righteous judgment. Or was it? Strangely for Mr. Chavez, he seems to be a trollery connoisseur himself. Mr. Chavez gloats here at the brilliant trolling skills of Donald Trump, when he trolled Meryl Streep in a masterful trolling tweet, as Mr. Chavez calls it. Mr. Chavez also enjoys retweeting a good troll tweet from time to time. It appears there is a lot of trollitus hypocritus going on here. Anyhow, we would certainly love to see a watchman debate between J.D. and Trollitus one day. We would also like to see a debate between Pastor Prasch and Pastor Big Banana Macarthur. But is Jacob truly a pastor? Some years ago, a bitter public battle took place over the rapture between Dr. Paul Wilkinson, Jacob Prasch, and Joe Schimmel.
The issue of whether you're being a pastor, you're not pastors, and this is what Paul had to say.
Wilkinson had accused them of not knowing what pastoring the flock is all about.
These men, sadly, are not doing what every pastor and every teacher is called ultimately to do.
How do you view the pastoral issue with regard to teaching about the rapture?
First of all, if you want to speak of dishonesty, Paul has not been honest. Joe is a pastor. I'm speaking at his church shortly.
Joe and Prasch both pushed back to prove pastoral credentials and ability to care for the sheep.
Paul very well knows that I have oversight of 8 fellowships in England. I have 3 in the United States, 1 in South Africa. I've planted a number of churches. To say that I don't have pastoral concerns...
Yeah, but orphanages.
To say nothing of our orphanages in Africa and Philippines, we have 100 children. We're opening a new one in India. It's simply devoid of any factual basis. He's saying things that are not true because he has nothing to say that is true.
We also observe that Prasch lists himself as Reverend in England, and many websites and churches list Mr. Prasch as Pastor Jacob. Fair enough. However, we see back in 2014, Jacob tells us that due to his anger problems and not being able to deal with the sheep, he thanks God that he is not called to be a pastor.
Verse 7, above reproach as God's steward, not self-willed, not quick-tempered. That's one thing I struggle with terribly. I can get pretty angry sometimes. Fortunately, the ministry God has called me to is not pastoral. I couldn't handle the sheep.
Oh, the double-mindedness. It seems that Mr. Prasch wants to have his big banana and eat it too. Please tune back soon, and don't forget to subscribe. Blessings.